What you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about the Prairie State. Illinois, land of Lincoln, city of broad shoulders. But beneath the cornfields and between the skyscrapers, something else lurks, something that doesn't belong in the history books. These aren't urban legends passed down through generations. These are accounts from real people, documented incidents that authorities tried to explain away. Events that left permanent scars on those who lived through them. Tonight, we're diving into 3 cases that will make you think twice before driving down a lonely Illinois back road after dark. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones, because what you're about to experience demands your full attention. These stories aren't just told, they're felt. And once you hear them, they'll stay with you long after this video ends. So ask yourself, are you really ready for this? Let's find out. Story 1, The Midnight Caller of Springfield. The autumn of 2019 brought an early frost to Springfield, Illinois. Sarah Chen had just moved into a small rental house on the city's west side. A modest, single-story home built in the 1970s with aluminum siding and a chain-link fence separating her yard from her neighbors. At 26, she was finally living alone for the first time, having taken a position as a medical records clerk at Memorial Medical Center. The house was perfect for her needs, affordable, close to work, and quiet. Too quiet, as it would turn out. Sarah's first week passed without incident. She established her routine quickly. Morning coffee on the small back patio, work from 8 to 5, evening walks around the neighborhood, then Netflix and dinner before bed. The house had come partially furnished, including a landline phone mounted on the kitchen wall, a relic the landlord had never bothered to remove. Sarah had laughed when she first saw it, running her fingers over the yellowed plastic and the coiled cord that connected the handset to the base. She'd almost asked to have it taken out, but there was something charmingly nostalgic about it. She'd decided to keep it, though she never actually used it. Everyone called her cell phone. The call started on her 8th night in the house. Sarah had just finished watching a documentary and was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when the landline rang. The sound startled her, a shrill, old-fashioned ring that seemed absurdly loud in the quiet house. She stared at the phone for 3 rings before approaching it, genuinely confused about who could possibly be calling. When she picked up, there was only silence on the other end. Not dead air, but the kind of silence that feels occupied. Someone was there, listening. "Hello?" Sarah said, her voice uncertain. Nothing. She could hear something though. Was it breathing? Or just the ambient sound of an open line? "Hello? Who is this?" Still nothing. After 30 seconds, she hung up, attributing it to a wrong number or a telemarketer's auto dialer malfunctioning. The phone rang again 20 minutes later. This time, Sarah answered more cautiously. "Hello?" Again, silence. But this time, she was sure she heard breathing. Slow, measured breaths. Not heavy or threatening, just there, present. "Look, I don't know who this is, but this isn't funny," she said, trying to sound firm despite the unease creeping into her chest. She hung up and unplugged the phone from the wool jack. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next night, Sarah came home from work to find the phone plugged back in. She stood in the kitchen doorway, her keys still in her hand, staring at the cord running from the wall to the phone base. She lived alone. The doors were locked. Her landlord, Mr. Kowalski, was a 68-year-old retiree who'd never entered the property without calling first. Sarah checked every room, every closet, every window. Everything was secure, nothing was missing or disturbed, just the phone plugged back in. She unplugged it again, this time shoving the jack into her junk drawer and putting a chair in front of the drawer. It was irrational, she knew, but it made her feel better.
That night, she barely slept, jumping at every creak and groan the old house made as it settled. At 12:47 a.m., the phone rang. Sarah bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering. That was impossible. The phone was unplugged. She'd unplugged it herself. But there it was, ringing in the kitchen, that same shrill, anachronistic sound cutting through the darkness. She grabbed her cell phone from the nightstand and turned on its flashlight, then crept toward the kitchen. The phone was still unplugged, the cord dangling uselessly from the handset, but it was ringing. Her hands shaking, Sarah picked up the receiver. "What do you want?" she whispered. This time there was a response, not words exactly, but a sound. A wet, clicking noise, like someone trying to speak through a mouthful of liquid. It lasted 5 seconds, then stopped. Then came a voice, barely audible, crackling, as if coming through decades of interference. "Sarah." She dropped the phone and ran to her bedroom, locking the door and pushing her dresser against it. She called 911. The Springfield Police Department sent an officer out within 20 minutes. Officer James Rodriguez was professional and thorough. He checked the house, the locks, the windows. He examined the phone, tested it, unplugged and replugged it. Everything seemed normal. He explained that old landlines could sometimes pick up cross signals or interference from radio frequencies. He suggested she had the line disconnected if it bothered her. He was kind, but Sarah could tell he thought she was overreacting. After he left, Sarah sat on her couch until dawn, every light in the house blazing. She called her landlord at 7 a.m. and demanded he had the landline removed entirely. Mr. Kowalski agreed, though he sounded confused. A technician came out that afternoon and not only disconnected the line, but physically removed the phone from the wall, leaving only a small patch of exposed wiring that he covered with a plastic plate. 3 nights passed without incident. Sarah began to relax, feeling foolish for her panic. She'd been stressed from the move, working long hours, not sleeping well. Her imagination had gotten the better of her. That's what she told herself. On the 4th night, at exactly 12:47 a.m., her cell phone rang. The caller ID showed her own landline number, the number that no longer existed, connected to a phone that was now in Mr. Kowalski's garage. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. She watched as the call went to voicemail, then listened as a notification appeared. Against every instinct, she played the message. That same wet, clicking sound. Then the voice, clearer now. "Sarah, I'm inside." She ran. She didn't pack, didn't grab anything but her keys and her phone. She drove straight to her parents' house in Decatur, arriving at 2 a.m. and refusing to explain through her tears why she'd shown up in her pajamas. She never went back to that house alone. Her father and 2 of his friends collected her belongings the following weekend. Sarah broke her lease, paying the penalty without argument. But here's the part that Sarah has never been able to explain, the detail that keeps her up at night, even now 3 years later. When her father's friends packed up her bedroom, they found something in her closet. Tucked behind her winter coats was an old rotary phone, covered in dust, its cord wrapped neatly around the base. Sarah had never seen it before. It wasn't there when she'd moved in. She'd unpacked that closet herself, had hung every item of clothing personally. And when one of the men picked it up, it rang. They left it there. If you're already feeling the chills, hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me which state I should cover next. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what's coming. Story 2. The Junction Box. Route 136 cuts through the heart of rural Illinois like a scar through farmland, connecting small towns that most people have never heard of, and probably never will. It's the kind of road where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another car, or cell phone signals die between cornfields, where the only landmarks are grain silos and the occasional decrepit barn. In the summer of 2017, this stretch of road became the site of an incident that the McDonough County Sheriff's Department still refuses to discuss in detail. Tyler Rodriguez was 19, home from his first year at Western Illinois University for the summer. He'd taken a job doing late-night inventory at a warehouse in Macomb, a shift that ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The pay was good, the work was mindless, and it left his days free. The only downside was the commute, a 30-minute drive through absolute darkness, most of it along Route 136. Tyler didn't mind the drive. He was a night owl by nature, and the solitude gave him time to think, to listen to podcasts, to decompress from the physical labor of moving boxes and scanning barcodes. He'd made the drive 5 nights a week for 6 weeks without incident. Then came July 19th. It was a Wednesday, hot and humid even at midnight. Tyler's shift had ended a few minutes early, and he was eager to get home, shower, and maybe play some video games before the sun came up. He was about 15 miles outside Macomb, in the dead zone where his phone had no service, when he saw the figure on the side of the road. At first he thought it was a deer. The shape was hunched over, positioned just at the edge of where his headlights reached. But as he got closer, Tyler realized it was a person. Someone bent over what looked like an electrical junction box, one of those gray utility boxes that dot rural roads. The person was wearing what appeared to be a maintenance uniform, though in the darkness, Tyler couldn't make out many details. Tyler slowed down. Breaking down on Route 136 at night was a nightmare scenario. He knew that firsthand from a flat tire he'd gotten his second week on the job. He rolled down his window as he pulled up alongside the figure, ready to ask if they needed help or could call someone. "Hey, you all right there?" Tyler called out. The figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge him at all. They remained bent over the junction box, their back to the road. Tyler could see now that they were doing something with their hands, manipulating something inside the open panel. "Sir? Ma'am? Do you need any help?" That's when the figure's head turned. Not their body, just their head, rotating with a smoothness that seemed wrong somehow. Too fluid. Tyler couldn't see their face in the darkness, but he could feel their attention on him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. I'm good," Tyler stammered, suddenly desperate to leave. He started to roll up his window when the figure straightened up. They were tall, impossibly tall, at least 7 feet, and thin, so thin that their uniforms seemed to hang on them like fabric on a wire frame. They took a step toward the car. Tyler hit the gas. His tires squealed as he accelerated, his heart pounding. In his rearview mirror, he watched the figure stand motionless in the middle of the road, illuminated by his taillights. Just standing there, watching him drive away. He didn't slow down until he reached the lights of the next town. He told himself it was a trick of the light, exhaustion, his imagination working overtime. He told himself a lot of things. He almost convinced himself too until he made the same drive 2 nights later. The figure was back. Same spot, same position, bent over the same junction box. Tyler's blood ran cold. He considered turning around, taking the long way home through Blandonsville. But that would add 45 minutes to his drive, and part of him, the rational daylight part, insisted he was being ridiculous. It was probably just a utility worker doing late-night maintenance. Probably. This time Tyler didn't stop. He kept his eyes forward and drove past at a steady speed. But as he drew level with the figure, his car stereo began to malfunction. The podcast he had been listening to dissolved into static, then into a low-frequency hum that seemed to vibrate in his chest. His dashboard lights flickered, and then, for just a moment, his headlights went completely dark. When they came back on, couldn't have been more than 2 seconds, though it felt like an eternity. The figure was standing directly in front of his car, facing him. Tyler screamed and swerved, his tires leaving the pavement and hitting the gravel shoulder. He wrestled the car back onto the road, his entire body shaking. When he checked his mirror, the road behind him was empty. Tyler called in sick for his next 3 shifts. He couldn't bring himself to make that drive. His supervisor was understanding, but told him that if he missed another night, he'd have to let him go. Tyler needed the job. Student loans weren't going to pay themselves. So he made a plan. He'd leave earlier, take a different route as much as possible, and make the drive during sunset instead of full darkness. He also bought a dash cam and installed it in his car, pointed forward. If something happened again, he wanted proof. His first night back, Tyler left at 10 p.m., giving himself plenty of time. He took Route 67 north, then cut over on Route 9, a longer route that avoided the worst of Route 136. Everything went smoothly. He worked his shift, clocked out at 7 a.m., and headed home in broad daylight. He felt silly for his earlier panic. But road construction forced a detour on his drive home. The detour led him right back to Route 136, to that same stretch of road. Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. It was morning now, though, full sun, nothing to worry about. He kept the dash cam running anyway. He almost missed it because of the daylight, but there it was, the junction box. Someone had spray-painted words on it in sloppy black letters. "Don't stop." Tyler's stomach dropped. He pulled over about 100 yards past it and sat there for a long moment, debating. Then he put the car in reverse and slowly backed up until he was level with the box. In the daylight, he could see it clearly. The box was old, rusted in places, and covered in graffiti. But those 2 words were fresh, the paint still glossy. Below them, someone had painted a tally mark. Just one, but it was unmistakable. Tyler took several photos with his phone, then drove home as fast as he legally could. He posted the photos to a local Reddit community, asking if anyone knew anything about the junction box or had seen the figure. The response shocked him. 17 different people replied, most of them truck drivers or others who regularly drove Route 136 late at night. They'd all seen the figure. Some of them had stopped, asked if it needed help. Those people reported that their cars had stalled, that they'd heard tapping on their windows, that they'd experienced missing time, leaving one spot and arriving at their destination hours later than they should have. One user, an account that had been inactive for months, sent Tyler a private message. It contained a single image, a photo of the same junction box but older, the spray paint faded and weathered. The tally marks numbered 43. Tyler never drove Route 136 at night again. He quit his job the following week, taking a position that paid less but had daytime hours. Other Redditors who'd commented on his post went out to examine the junction box. According to their reports, someone had painted over the words and tally marks with gray paint that matched the box. The McDonough County Sheriff's Department claimed they had no knowledge of any incidents on that stretch of road, and no reports of a utility worker matching Tyler's description. But the stories continue. Even now, if you search online, you'll find recent accounts from drivers on Route 136. They describe the same figure, the same junction box. Some of the more recent posts claim there's a new message spray painted there, though the wording varies by account. The most common version, "It's counting." Tyler's dashcam footage from that morning captured something he didn't notice until he reviewed it weeks later. As he drove past the junction box that final time, for just 3 frames, a tenth of a second, a face appeared in his back window. 2 long features pressed against the glass from the outside, mouth opened in what might have been a smile. Tyler hasn't watched the footage since. He won't tell anyone where the file is stored. But sometimes on quiet nights, he checks the Route 136 Reddit threads, counts the new stories, and adds them to a number only he knows. He wonders how high the count will go. He wonders when it will stop. He wonders if it ever will. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. You won't want to miss what's next. Drop a comment if you've ever experienced something strange on a lonely road. Your story might be featured.
Story 3. The photo from Cahokia. Lindsay Hoffman wasn't particularly interested in history. The 23-year-old graphic designer from Edwardsville had lived her entire life within 20 miles of one of the most significant archaeological sites in North America without ever visiting it. Cahokia Mounds, the remains of a pre-Columbian Native American city that once rivaled London in size, simply wasn't on her radar. She preferred coffee shops and art galleries to ancient earthworks and historical markers. It was her boyfriend, Marcus, who suggested the visit in October 2020. They'd been dating for 8 months and were running out of date ideas that were both COVID-safe and interesting. Marcus had read an article about Cahokia Mounds being one of the most underrated historical sites in America, and the fact that it was practically in their backyard made it even more appealing. Besides, it was outdoors, the weather was perfect, and admission was cheap. Lindsay agreed, mostly because she liked spending time with Marcus, and the photos might make good material for her Instagram. They arrived at Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site around 3 p.m. on a Saturday. The place was larger than Lindsay had imagined. 2,200 acres of preserved land containing the remnants of 120 mounds built by the Mississippian culture between 600 and 1400 CE. At its peak, the city had a population of 10,000 to 20,000 people, making it larger than London at the time. The civilization had mysteriously declined and abandoned the site by 1400, leaving behind only the massive earthen mounds that still dominated the landscape. Marcus was in heaven, reading every placard and historical marker with genuine enthusiasm. Lindsay found herself enjoying it more than she'd expected. There was something humbling about standing in a place where thousands of people had lived, worked, loved, and died centuries before Columbus set sail. The mounds themselves were impressive, particularly Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas, rising 100 feet high and covering 14 acres at its base.
They climbed Monk's Mound together, Lindsay stopping frequently to catch her breath and to take photos. The view from the top was spectacular. You could see the Gateway Arch in St. Louis in the distance, a modern monument visible from an ancient one. Lindsay took a selfie with Marcus, the mound's expansive plaza spread out below them. She posted it immediately with the caption, "Who knew history could be this beautiful?" As the afternoon wore on, they explored more of the site. Marcus wanted to see Mound 72, where archaeologists had discovered the remains of what appeared to be an important individual buried with over 250 other bodies in ritual sacrifices. The mound itself was smaller than Monk's Mound and had been partially excavated and restored. A chain-link fence surrounded the excavation area, and interpretive signs explained the grisly discoveries made there in the 1960s. Lindsay found the place unsettling. Unlike the grand Monk's Mound, which felt almost peaceful in its massive presence, Mound 72 had an oppressive atmosphere. Maybe it was knowing what had been buried there, all those bodies, many of them young women whose lives had been cut short for reasons modern people could only guess at. Or maybe it was the late afternoon shadows that were starting to stretch across the ground, making the excavation pits look deeper and darker than they probably were. "Take my picture here," Marcus said, positioning himself in front of the informational sign about the burial finds. Lindsay obliged, snapping 3 quick photos with her phone. Marcus came over to review them, making her delete 2 because his eyes were closed in one and the lighting was weird in another. They kept the third, though Marcus complained that he looked washed out. By the time they left Cahokia Mounds, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lindsay felt good about the visit. She had some excellent photos for her portfolio. Marcus was happy, and she'd learned something new. It had been a good day. She edited a few photos that evening before posting them to her professional Instagram account, the one she used to showcase her photography and design work. It was 3 days before she really looked at the photos from Mound 72. Lindsay was going through her phone, organizing files and deleting duplicates, when she opened the folder from the Cahokia trip. Most of the photos were fine, scenic shots of the mounds, the landscape, selfies with Marcus. Then she reached the photos from Mound 72, the ones she had taken of Marcus in front of the excavation site. In the photo Marcus kept, he stood centered in the frame, the informational sign visible behind him. But in the 2 deleted photos, the ones that were supposed to be in her trash folder but had somehow not been removed, there was something else. In the first deleted photo, the one where Marcus's eyes were closed, there was a figure standing behind the chain-link fence, partially obscured by the shadows of the excavation pit. Lindsay zoomed in, her heart rate increasing. The figure was indistinct, just a dark shape, really, but it was definitely person-sized and person-shaped. That was weird. She didn't remember anyone else being in that area when they were there. But the site had other visitors. Someone could have walked up without her noticing. The second deleted photo made her breath catch. In this one, taken just seconds after the first, the figure was closer, much closer. It was now on the near side of the fence, standing just behind and to the left of Marcus. She could make out more details now. It appeared to be wearing some kind of dark clothing or covering, and it was tall, taller than Marcus, who was 6 feet. Most disturbing was that she could now see what might have been a face, though the resolution made it difficult to be certain. It looked wrong somehow, the proportions off. Lindsay's hands were shaking as she opened the third photo, the one Marcus had kept. The figure was gone. Just Marcus, the sign, the fence, the empty excavation behind him. She flipped back and forth between the photos, her confusion growing. The timestamp showed they'd been taken within 5 seconds of each other. How could someone appear in 2 photos and completely vanish in the third? She considered sending the photos to Marcus, then decided against it. He'd probably have a logical explanation. Someone walking their dog in the background, a park ranger doing late-day rounds, her phone's camera glitching. Besides, he was already teasing her about being spooked by Mound 72. She didn't want to give him more ammunition. Instead, Lindsay did what any millennial would do. She posted the anomalous photos to Reddit, specifically to a paranormal photography subreddit.
She included an explanation of where they were taken and asked if anyone could explain the figure. The responses ranged from skeptical, someone suggesting it was obviously just another tourist, to enthusiastic, believers insisting it was a Native American spirit haunting the burial mound, to technical, photographers explaining pareidolia and how shadows can create the illusion of figures. Most of the comments didn't bother her, but one did. A user with the handle u/Mississippian Historian, whose post history showed expertise in pre-Columbian Native American cultures, wrote a long comment that Lindsay kept returning to over the following days. The discoveries at Mound 72 represent some of the most significant and disturbing findings at Cahokia. The burial you were photographing contained the remains of what archaeologists believe was a high-status male, laid out on a bed of 20,000 marine shell disc beads. But surrounding him were the bodies of 250 other individuals, many showing signs of ritual sacrifice. Most unsettling were the remains of 4 young men whose heads and hands had been cut off, and 53 young women who appeared to have been strangled before burial. The archaeological consensus is that these were sacrificial victims, but the purpose of such mass sacrifice remains unclear. Some researchers have suggested the victims were war captives or slaves. Others propose they were willing participants in a religious ceremony we can't fully understand. What's undeniable is that Mound 72 is a place where hundreds of people died violently in what appears to have been a deliberate, organized ritual. If anywhere in Illinois could be considered genuinely haunted by actual trauma and death, it would be this location. The figure in your photos aligns with traditional descriptions of guardian spirits in Mississippian spirituality, entities that were believed to watch over important burial sites and sacred spaces. Whether you believe in such things or not, I'd recommend not returning to that mound. Some places should be left undisturbed. Lindsay didn't return to Cahokia Mounds. She tried to forget about the photos, going as far as to delete them from her phone and her cloud storage, but the deletion didn't take. Every time she checked, the photos were back, restored somehow. Her phone's tech support couldn't explain it. They suggested a factory reset, which she did, painstakingly backing up and restoring all her data. The photos came back. She stopped using that phone entirely after it started doing other strange things, opening the camera app on its own at exactly 3:47 a.m. multiple nights in a row, displaying notifications for text messages that didn't exist, playing audio that sounded like chanting or drumming through the speaker even when all her apps were closed. But the worst incident happened 2 months after her visit to Cahokia. Lindsay woke up one morning to find a new photo in her gallery, one she definitely hadn't taken. The timestamp showed it had been created at 3:47 a.m. that morning. The photo showed her bedroom, taken from the doorway, looking toward her bed. She could see herself asleep in the frame, covers pulled up to her chin. Standing beside her bed, looking down at her sleeping form, was the figure from Mound 72. Lindsay moved out of her apartment within the week. She's changed phones 3 times since then. She's also changed her stance on history. She believes in it now, especially the parts that warn against disturbing the dead. She hasn't posted publicly about Cahokia since deleting her Reddit account, but she did send one final message to u/Mississippian Historian before disappearing from the platform. The message said, "You were right. I should never have gone there. But I think it's too late. I think I brought something home with me." The historian never responded to that message, but they did edit their original comment, adding a single line at the bottom that's still there if you know where to look. Edit. If you visited Mound 72 between October 2020 and March 2021 and experienced anything unusual afterward, please contact me. You're not alone. Lindsay doesn't know how many people have contacted the historian. She's afraid to check. She's afraid of a lot of things now. She's afraid of the notification sound her phone makes at 3:47 a.m., even though she keeps it turned off. She's afraid of photographs that show things that weren't there when the shutter clicked. And most of all, she's afraid of the figure she sometimes sees in her peripheral vision, always just at the edge of what she can clearly see, tall and patient and waiting. She wonders if it will ever leave, or if this is her life now, permanent penance for disturbing a place where death still lingers.
She wonders if the 53 strangled women buried at Mound 72 knew what was coming for them, if they saw their fate approaching in the moments before. She wonders if that's what's happening to her now, a slow, inevitable approach of something she can sense but can't escape. Sometimes, late at night, she looks at those deleted photos one more time. They're still on her phone, appearing and reappearing no matter how many times she tries to erase them. And every time she looks, the figure is a little bit closer to Marcus, a little bit clearer, a little bit more defined. In the most recent version of the photo, one that definitely, impossibly wasn't there when she first looked at these images, the figure is looking directly at the camera. And Lindsay can finally see its face. She wishes she couldn't. Before we wrap up, make sure that like button is hit and you're subscribed with notifications on. Your support keeps these stories coming every week. 3 stories, 3 locations in Illinois, 3 encounters with something that defies explanation. You might tell yourself these stories are just stories, that there's a rational explanation for everything you just heard. Maybe you're right. Maybe Sarah's phone calls were crossed wires and electromagnetic interference. Maybe Tyler saw a utility worker with unusual proportions distorted by darkness and exhaustion. Maybe Lindsay's photos were just digital artifacts, glitches in a smartphone camera, and the figure is nothing more than shadows forming familiar shapes. Or maybe not. The thing about Illinois is that it's old, not just its recorded history, but its bones. This land has seen civilizations rise and fall, has absorbed countless stories, countless tragedies. The streets of Chicago alone have witnessed more death and violence than most cities see in their entire existence. The rural roads remember accidents and crimes that never made the news. And places like Cahokia remind us that mystery and darkness existed here long before any of us arrived. What you do with these stories is up to you. File them away as entertainment, share them with friends who love a good scare, or maybe think about them the next time you're driving down a dark road alone, or when your phone rings from a number that shouldn't exist, or when you're reviewing photos and notice something in the background that wasn't there when you pressed the shutter. I've got more stories waiting from Illinois and beyond. Places where the ordinary meets the impossible, where everyday people encounter things that change them forever. Next week, we're heading north to Wisconsin, where a small-town librarian discovered that some books contain more than just words. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, but maybe keep the lights on tonight. And remember, just because something has an explanation doesn't mean you want to know what it is. If these stories kept you up tonight, show some love with a like, subscribe for more terror, and drop a comment below. Sweet dreams, if you can.